Shalom, shalom to everyone watching. We are continuing our learning through the book To Be a Jew by Rabbi Chaim Halevi Donin. Incredible book. It's used as you might say, as a textbook for those wanting to become Jewish or wanting to become Jew. It's a very good book also for those of you who perhaps never learned the basics in Judaism. Definitely, I recommend this book. It's, like I said, a basic learning book, and recommend you learn it, or just come to our channel, which is youtube.com/Mr. Caminos de Israel, and we have this whole entire series, not only in English, but also in Spanish. For those who speak Spanish, you can go there. El Ser Judío está disponible en español a través de nuestro canal de YouTube. So either way you choose, you have the ability now to be able to learn to be a Jew. Well, we are now in chapter 17 in the book To Be a Jew, and we're going to be looking at adoption of a Jewish child, adoption in the conversion of a non-Jewish child, and the issues of conversion. So we start on page 280 in the textbook of To Be a Jew, Adoption and Conversion. Since Jewish law does not regard children as the property of the parent, the notion of transferring title to the children to someone else through adoption simply does not exist. Jewish law regards the relationship between natural parents and their offspring to be irrevocable. Let me say that again. The natural link or relationship between the natural parents and their offsprings is considered to be irrevocable. Nevertheless, the idea of a spiritual parenthood is acknowledged. He who raises someone else's child is regarded as if he had actually brought him into the world physically. Megillah 13a, Sanhedrin 19b. It is one of the most noblest acts of charity to extend care and love to children whose natural parents are either unwilling or unable to discharge their obligation to their children. By the way, saying this, we do have various fundings that goes out to those who are orphans. So if you look up our organization, one of the things that we are completely committed in helping is to help orphans, whether they be Jewish or not. Whoever does this, it's an incredible mitzvah to help an orphan. So if you have a chance, please donate to the cause of the orphanage program that we have. The adoption of a Jewish child does not change the religious status of a child as a Cohen, as a Levite, or Israel, nor does it change the criteria that determines whether or not Pidyon Haben must take place. If the child's natural father is unknown to have been a Cohen or a Levite, the child maintains that designation, even if the adoptive father is not of that classification. If the adopted child is the firstborn to its natural mother and would have required a Pidyon Haben, then the adopting parents must arrange for the Pidyon Haben, as we mentioned in the previous video. In view of the spiritual ties, however, the adopted child may be named as the son or daughter of the adopted parent. If it's a girl, he should be named in the synagogue. If it's a boy, it should be done at circumcision. If the child had already been circumcised before it was adopted, but did not have the proper brit, and haftafat dam brit should be arranged, and the child should be named then. If the adoptive father is a Cohen or a Levite, that designation is not transferred to the adoptive child, because you cannot be transferred into a Cohen just because the Cohen or Levite is the one that's adopting the child, and the child may not be a Cohen or Levite. Therefore, when adopting a child whose natural mother is known to be Jewish, it is the most important to ascertain the status of both natural parents on several points in order to determine the religious obligations of the parents to the child. If a boy, if this is the firstborn of its mother, is it? If the mother the daughter of a Cohen or Levite? Is the natural father Jewish? If so, is he a Cohen or a Levite? Were any other children given the way for adoption? If so, it would be important to ascertain with whom there might exist a brother-sister relationship. Adopted children are expected to show great reverence and loyalty to the deceased adoptive parent through the recital of Kaddish. It is appropriate for them to observe all the laws of mourning as if they would be the natural parents. Adoption and conversion of a non-Jewish child. Here we get a little more specific regarding children that goes through conversion and adoption. Increasing instances of Jewish family adopting children born to non-Jewish mothers make it imperative that the basic principle of this hitherto rarely utilized areas of Jewish law become better known. A child born to a non-Jewish mother, regardless of who the father is, has the status of that mother a non-Jew according to Jewish law. The legal or civil adoption by the Jewish couple of such a child does not automatically confer the religious status of a Jew upon the child. For a non-Jewish adopted child to be regarded as Jewish in the view of the religion, he or she must go through a formal conversion. Even if the child is raised as a Jew, he feels Jewish and goes through the formal conversion. Even if he is raised as a Jew and grows up as a ultra-devout, ultra-Orthodox person whose Jewish faith is unquestioned, whose religious commitments are without reservation, and whose devotion and loyalty to the Jewish people are beyond question, his legal status as a Jew is denied him until he has also gone through the rite of conversion. As a matter of fact, I had a young man who began attending the learning to be a Jew and also bar mitzvah because the mother went through a conversion that was not accepted. It was non-kosher conversion. In other words, the child's parent was converted through a reform community, and of course the Orthodox world don't accept conversion done by the conservative or reform, and thus his status was questioned. They would not call him up to read his bar mitzvah until he went through a halakhic Orthodox conversion. Thank God we were able to do both, teach him how to read his Torah portion, and assure that he would be gone through the process of conversion, in which he finally did it. And Baruch Hashem, today he is davening in a local Orthodox minyan. Merely giving a Yiddish name or Hebrew name to an adopted non-Jewish child, even if the prayer is made in the synagogue, is of no religious consequences at all and does not affect or alter the non-Jewish status of the child. Now it's interesting, my good friend Solomon, who spoke with a big rabbi of Chabad, who he put on one of his podcasts, said, there's so many people converting over to Reform and Conservative, and those are not accepted. They're not considered kosher. But that's not only the problem. There's another problem now which he did not address. And the fact that there are many conversions that are done by Orthodox rabbis that have a history of helping people in the Jewish community to become Jewish. Because of the politics in the Rabbanut, they won't accept any other Orthodox bet din except those they have adopted as the only kosher one that the Rabbinate will accept, have laid themselves into a major problem between Orthodox rabbis who do halakhic conversion according to the law and those who basically are in there for the money, by and large, those that are accepted and granted recognition by the state operating rabbinical board in Israel. Not everyone is in agreement. Not everyone accepts that the Rabbanut should be giving out these type of licenses in order to, quote unquote, make a Jew Jew. Never in our history have we ever read or found out that they have the power. They're not the Sanhedrin. Now, if they would have been the Sanhedrin, we'd be talking about a different thing altogether. But the fact is that now the state has enabled a particular board of rabbis, which we don't all agree with in the sense of assuming that type of power, now has the power, becomes determined as to who is accepted in Israel and who is not, leaving many kosher conversions done by Orthodox rabbis completely in a status of limbo, which is wrong. It's morally wrong. I've raised my voice about this, and I will continue to fight strongly for the benefit of those who have converted honestly and sincerely. What they need to do is to accept these conversions as Beki Halacha, just like it's done in Israel, by rabbis who are not part of the board of the Rabbanut, and yet they accept them too. Well, merely giving a Yiddish Sephardic Hebrew name to an adopted non-Jewish child, even if the prayer is made in the synagogue, is of no religious consequences and does not affect at all the non-Jewish status of the child. The conversion of a child must be done with the approval and the presence of a rabbinical bet din, consisting of 3 qualified persons. And we could get into what qualified means. Among the bet din, there's got to be at least one person who is familiar and is expert in the laws of conversion. A bet din will not act in such a case unless the request for the conversion is made by adopting parents. The conversion rites for a male child consist of the following. The child must be circumcised with the intent of conversion. Such intent must be made known to the moil so that he may arrange for the presence of a qualified bet din and recite the proper benediction. If the child has been already circumcised by a doctor for reason of health, a moil must be called in to perform the symbolic circumcision that consists of the rite of Hatafat Dam Brit, which involves a pin brick. By the way, there is no halakha that it must be a moil. It must be someone that knows the law of Brit Milah, or someone that is familiar with it. This consists of the rite of Hatafat Dam Brit, which involves a pin pricking, letting the spot of the blood, and is required prayers relating to the conversion and affirmation of the covenant, which are to be said. When the child is about a year old, it may be safe to do it much earlier or older. It must be immersed in a ritual bath called a mikveh. The bet din recites the appropriate benediction relative to the immersion of the proselytes. Conversion rites for a female child consist of only immersing her in the ritual bath, into the mikveh. The appropriate benediction relative to the immersion of the proselyte are recited by the bet din. Of course, they repeat it, because the candidate for the process must repeat the beracha for hagerim. In other cases, it's customary for a Hebrew name to be given the child by officiating the bet din following the ritual immersion. The absence of an immersion in a kosher mikveh for either a male or female, or the absence of a proper circumcision of a Hatafat Dam Brit substitute in the case of a male renders the conversion invalid. Keep in mind, there are 3 things, according to the Shulchan Aruch, that basically qualifies a convert as a kosher convert. Number 1, it is for the male circumcision or a Hatafat Dam Brit to be done, which is with witnesses, at least 2 additional kosher witnesses in addition to the one that's pricking the person. Number 2, a kosher mikveh. Now, kosher mikveh can be included into the greatest kosher mikveh that we've seen, the ocean, or a place called a tevilah, or mikveh, that is kosher and used by the community. This becomes a problem, because many Orthodox communities will not allow anyone from outside to utilize their mikveh for this purpose. Thank God, now in Aventura there is a kosher mikveh that was created to benefit all 3 communities. Thank God for that. but that was with a lot of fight from the Orthodox community that they didn't want the conservative to have a kosher mikveh. Unfortunately, by the work of all three communities, it was realized, and now there is a kosher mikveh in Aventura. The formal rites of conversion for a child must be followed by education and training that will be instilled in him by a profound love for the faith, and that will encourage him to observe the commandments in the Lord and become a loyal and devoted Jew. Once the proper rite of conversion has been fulfilled, the adopted child is regarded as being Jewish as any other born Jew, subject to all the requirements, to all the disciplines, as well as the privilege of being a Jewish of faith. And one should never, after a child goes through something like this, be discouraging or putting his status in question. That's where the room of Amalek and really has destroyed incredible lives of Jewish people to no end. Reason for the cause of many negative edicts from Shemayim upon the Jewish people for the way they mistreat converts. And let me emphasize this. We do not mistreat proselytes. To do so is a sin against Shemayim and the very eye and heart of heaven. A rabbi involved in doing such a thing can lose his life from Shemayim, from the hands of God. I've seen it. I've seen many rabbis speaking ill of a proselyte, eventually having to be unalived by Shemayim's hand. I've seen it. I've been witness to it. I mean, they just fall sick. They don't know what happened. And they just pass over and you go, you wonder, what happened to this rabbi? Because he spoke evil. He did evil works against a ger, proselyte. God does not like this. God is against these rabbis that's always picking a fight against them to make them worse than the sons of devils. He is. So be careful. Don't pick a fight with God. You will lose. Now we're going to see in our next portion about conversion. So stay tuned and be connected. Shalom.